What's up, everybody? My name is Scott Paddock, and today I am going to show you two pro-level articulations that you've probably never heard of before that will add a whole lot of character to your saxophone sound. If you're new to my YouTube channel, please show some love and hit the subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, and click the bell for notifications. The first articulation I'm going to show you today is called the THWAP. THWAP. If you followed me on YouTube at all, you know that I like to call articulations by what they sound like. And when I made up this articulation, it sounded like a thwop to me. So what I was trying to do when I made this up was add more power to a hit note. So I play in a lot of funk bands, rock bands, R&B bands. And in bands like that, you have a lot of horn hits. So I was always trying to come up with a way to make those notes sound a lot more powerful. So if I just play a D, if I accent it, it sounds like this. Which sounds good, it's strong, it's powerful. If I wanted to add a little more depth or power to it, I could add a grace note. But that doesn't really give me the power that I was looking for when I'm doing one of these hits. So after playing the muted A, if you've never heard of a muted A, it's when you play your A and you add these three keys here. When you do that, you can get a lot of power on that A from the muted fingering, these three fingerings. So it's like this. I really like that sound and how much more power it gave me, so I figured out a way to add that sound onto other notes. Now pretty much any note above a high A. So here's what it sounds like if I just do a thwop on the high D. So you can hear there's like that thwop sound in front of it, and then you hear the power of the D. Now, all I'm doing is I'm fingering a middle D, so I'm fingering 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and right before I go into the high D, I finger that and I play the high D. So I just catch the very edge of the middle D before I go into the palm key D. So it's kind of like playing a grace note, but just the very end of the grace note, and the grace note is a low D, so it's giving me that big interval jump and giving me a big powerful thwop sound at the end of it. And it sounds even better if you do a fall afterwards. Now you can do that on pretty much any high note, anything above A. So I can do it on a C sharp. Now, when you're using that thwop sound, again, it's to add power to a single note. Usually not going to thwop a note and hold it, because that sounds weird. But if you're doing a horn hit, or you're taking a solo and you just want one really big stabby, jabby note, a thwop is a really great way to do it. That thwop takes it to a whole different level. The THWAP articulation, super cool articulation, and I haven't really heard any other saxophone players use that type of articulation. The saxophone world is a giant world, and I haven't heard everyone, so I'm sure someone else has come up with something similar. So if you have heard another saxophone player use that type of articulation, leave their name in a comment below. I'm curious to see if there are other saxophone players out there doing it. Now, a lot of people use the muffled A. And Gerald Albright does this super cool thing that's very similar on a front F. But that's a little bit different. Super cool sound, but it's a little bit different technique than the THWAP A. By the way, if you'd like me to do a tutorial on how to do that Gerald Albright front F, hit me with a comment below. If enough people want to hear it, I'll do a 2-minute tutorial on it. So that is the first pro-level articulation I'm going to show you today, the THWAP hit note. If you'd like to learn a lot more about adding style into your saxophone playing through the use of articulations, or just getting better at playing the saxophone in general, I'd like to invite you into my saxophone world at the Scott Paddock Sax School, where I will teach you step by step how to become a better saxophone player. Pro level articulation number 2. This one is on the exact opposite end of the articulation spectrum from the THWAP. This is more of a medium swing, a laid back articulation, and I call it the stutter step. Now with the stutter step, I'm just putting a little space in between the notes by doing a little fingering thing on my saxophone. So first I'm going to play it so you can hear what it sounds like, and then I'm going to tell you how to do it. Now, I wouldn't ever do the stutter step that many times in a row, but I want you to hear what it is. What I'm doing is I'm putting a false fingering in between every note just before I'm going to play the note, so I get like a ba-dee into that note. Ba-dee meaning the sound that I'm getting. So I'm getting ba-dee, ba-dee, ba-dee into the note that I'm playing. Again, I would never play it that many times in a row, but I would use this articulation if I was playing a melody or playing a solo, and I just wanted to get a little bit more bounce in the line. And it's one of those articulations that when you play it, most people don't hear exactly what you're doing, but they can hear that the notes sound different and there's a little bounce on it. Even if another saxophone player hears you do it, they might not know exactly what you're doing. So the way you do it is actually pretty easy. You just lift your front finger in between. So you're creating a false fingering when you do it, and it only works for your right hand notes. So F sharp, E, and D. So I'm gonna stand up so you can see my hands a little bit better, and I'm gonna do the stutter step articulation. Watch this finger right here. So what I'm doing in slow motion is, again, I'm lifting this finger and it's giving me a false fingering, kind of a furp sound in between each note, but it's so short that you don't really hear the sound, you just hear the space. So here it is in slow motion and sped up. So here is how I would use it in context. Did you hear all of those stutter steps in the melody? Now, if I was playing that melody for real in a performance, I wouldn't put that many of them in a row. I usually only do one or two at a time, but I want you to hear what the effect is on the notes when I use the stutter step articulation. So if you want to put a little extra style in a medium swing solo or a medium swing melody, use the stutter step articulation, where you're going to add like a little extra bounce and a little something on the note that isn't really obvious, but again, adds a whole bunch of style. And this isn't something that a ton of people use, so I can't tell you how many times I've played that in a lesson, and the student who heard me play it said, "How did you make that sound?" So it's one of those articulations that's a little less common, but if you use it correctly, it can be super cool. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video, and if you want some more tips and tricks and some structure in learning how to play the saxophone, come visit me at the Scott Paddock Sax School. Thanks a lot.